Over the past couple of weeks, the race to the White House has been tightening. 538, as of this morning, said that Secretary Clinton has a 59% chance of winning, down from 90%. How critical are these debates?
Well, they're important. Some of the tightening that you see is predictable. So when someone has a lead of the sort that she did in August, you can expect that at these few months going into the debate, they start to narrow. So it's not a total surprise that this is happening. The debates are going to be important. If the polls remain where they were today, the election would be a nail-biter. It's pretty clear right now. But the question is, do the polls kind of revert back to the range where they were a few weeks ago? And the debates can certainly help her, if she does well, to achieve that.
And you said if she does well, what does a victory in one of these debates look like?
Well, the most important part of a debate is not making a mistake. So it's not about what you do or what you say. It's about not doing or saying something embarrassing, something that becomes the focus of the news. The most important thing she can do is demonstrate her command of policy and her command of the big issues facing the country, which is where she has an advantage over Donald Trump. And the second thing she can do, which is her ongoing struggle, is to use the debates to show a little bit more about who she is as a person, what her character is, to try to use these 3 nights that are going to take place with huge viewerships to win over the hearts of voters, not just their minds.
And then off of that, for Trump, is it even more important than to be just not mess up and just be calm and steady? Is that sort of the strategy he should deploy?
Well, calm and steady is not his strategy. So on paper, yes. So on paper, what you'd expect him to do is to demonstrate that he can contain himself, that he can act like a leader. He understands what the role is through the debate. It's also going to be important for him to show some command of the big policy issues. This is a place he's vulnerable. Beyond his temperament, there are questions among Republicans. How much does he actually know about the different hot spots in the country? So he's not going to want to have a moment where he literally can't answer a question, which has happened in earlier debates with other people, and B, where he loses his control and temper too much. That said, I wouldn't expect him to totally tame himself. That's not his style. In the end, he believes in a kind of smash-mouth approach to politics that's worked for him until this point.
So on that note of just sort of that smashing technique, past opponents of Clinton have seen, there's been sort of this weird gender divide, especially with Rick Lazio in that Senate debate where he sort of got into Clinton's personal space. What's the balance going to be between how Trump can sort of give the sort of attacks that he wants to give, but not come off as not chivalrous?
It's an important question. This happened in 1984, too. Not with Hillary Clinton. Geraldine Ferraro, who was the Democratic vice presidential nominee, is debating George H.W. Bush, who's the vice president. And there's a moment where he starts to literally explain foreign policy to her, and she stops him and says, "You don't have to be patronizing to me. I understand the issues." And it was a moment, a problematic moment. Here, this is going to be amplified. I'm not sure that Trump cares so much, though. In some ways, he is running a campaign where he says he can speak the way he speaks, that he will not be constrained by what he calls political correctness. And in some ways, he's appealing to the white male vote. And so I'm not sure how much he is going to be cautious in that interaction, but I think it's an important factor. I think it will be a different dynamic right now than when he was dealing with 10 Republicans on the stage. But he didn't hold back with Carly Fiorina in the primary, so it didn't constrain him then.
Yeah, and you said with that non-college educated white vote, his core base of supporters, why are we seeing them now in 2016 and we didn't see them 4 years ago? What do you think has happened that has sort of led to at least his rise?
They've been there. I don't think we should say they haven't been there. Ronald Reagan appealed to them in the 1980s. This was a key part of the Reagan coalition. I think Republicans in the last few election cycles, part of what's happened is the business faction of the party that favors policies that are not very beneficial to most Republicans has gained a lot of clout. And so I think what you're seeing is an attempt to achieve some kind of balance within the coalition that already existed.
I see. Also on that debate stage will be, or at least for the first debate, will be NBC Nightly News' anchor, Lester Holt.
Yep.
What do you see is his job as the moderator? What do you think his role is in terms of fact-checking the...
Well, that's a debate. So there's some who say the moderator should step back, let the candidates say what they want, and let the candidates attack each other. They should not intervene. And this is a moment when many people think the media does too much, that in some ways they have become a player in the political process. And then you have another school that says they have to fact check. They have to push back against candidates. They talk about Matt Lauer's, the forum he did with the candidate where Donald Trump basically said what he wanted to say, and Republicans feel the same way about Hillary Clinton. And so I tend to think the moderators can assert themselves. I think we are in an era right now where facts are not always front and center, where there is a willingness to be very fast and loose with the data, with the facts, to say what you want to say, and there's a lot of space to do that. And so in these debates, this could easily spin out of control. And it can also spin out of control given the animosity between these two candidates. So I think the moderators will have to interject, and they should push back on certain issues.
Okay. And sort of lastly, on our consumption of news. Most students at Lawrenceville consume their news online, mostly Facebook. And they tend to get to pick where they listen to their news. They get to pick their outlets. Precisely, we have a greater access to this news, but we also get to pick it. So how does this make us aware? Does it make us more or less aware of what's going on around us?
I think it has a detrimental effect. I think it's pretty clear all the social scientists who look at the news have concluded what you're saying is a pretty broad trend, that we now filter news and people consume it through outlets that interpret the news in ways that are reinforcing their own ideas. And obviously on television you have Fox News and MSNBC News, and this is a problem. Ultimately it limits how much you hear alternative points of view, and just as important, it allows for arguments that again have no real basis in fact to get out there. So I think it's good there's so much news out there. I think it's actually good that we have access to almost unlimited space to write about the news, to speak about the news. That could potentially be great, but the kind of filtering that you see is not good in the end. I always tell my students to really push themselves to read and to listen to and to watch points of view that are totally the opposite of their natural inclinations politically.
All right.
And it plays into this polarized political era that we live in. We live in an era where most people are not willing to move from red to blue or blue to red, and we look at why this happens. And one of the big forces is the media. The way we get the news creates disincentives for really thinking differently or seeing possibilities that go beyond the arguments you hear in your own circle.
You said, just lastly there's fewer people want to go from red to blue, blue to red. So in these last 50 days before the election, less than 50 days, what is the demographic, or what are sort of these last fighting hopes for Trump and for Clinton? Where are they going to be trying to get those last minute votes? Is it just in turnout?
Well, Donald Trump's goal is to solidify Republican votes, and so his most basic objective is to make sure that the Republicans who came out in 2012 and 2008, that they all do come out again and they vote for him. And right now that's what the polls are showing. Republicans are coming home in some ways. They're not going to vote for the Democrat, and they are going to vote for someone who not everyone likes so much. And then he's going to need a little more. So everyone talks about what's his path to the Electoral College victory. He's going to have to win almost all of the battleground states. So that entails also reaching out to disaffected Democrats to some degree. Hillary Clinton's a different objective. She doesn't need to win Republican votes. She doesn't need to turn people. Her big challenge is to make sure that that hardcore Democratic coalition, which showed itself in 2008 and 2012, actually comes out. So then in a state like Ohio and Pennsylvania and Florida, in all those states, all of a sudden you don't see the vote going to the Republicans because voters aren't coming out. She's not going to lose them, but they might not vote at all.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.